I have a bunch of, like we talked earlier, I've got a few different graphics. I have the whole plan set in PDFs if we want to get to that level of detail, but we also did two quick graphics that I think give the, the 30,000 view elevation of it and a cross section to understand what that is. And then I also have, if we want to share, I've got a few videos on kind of what a reclaim looks like and what a paver looks like if people want to go there. We don't have to. The video, I think, looks good on my end. I tested it today, and people said it was okay. It's, for some people, the audio works and others it doesn't, and sometimes it's choppy, but we can try it if people are interested in it.
I think it's a good visual if people are interested, just to see what to expect. We should be, it's not even 6 yet, but I think we're anticipating about 8 or 9 different families, households.
I think we have the benefit of piquing some interest in that National Grid started their work, I believe, yesterday. So that probably got some people's ears up.
We're just going to give it a couple more minutes for people to join. It's just 6 now.
Everyone's being polite and keeping themselves muted.
Well, at my house, trust me when I tell you I have to, because it's, just after dinner time and my kids are running around like maniacs right now. So you'll leave them in the background otherwise.
Bob, I'm surprised you can't hear my kids.
Maybe through the back door.
I'm just gonna check the link real quick to see if I'm missing anyone. Hold on. I think we got everyone now. I'll just wait for Dave. Because Laura had told me she can't make it any longer. I think we're good, Dave. I think we have everybody who I was expecting.
Okay, so I should just start right in?
Sure. So thank you. I'll just start, Dave, I guess, and just say thank you guys for joining us. I know this was a while. We had planned to do it in person, and then this happened. So I'm glad those of you could join us. I am letting you know we're recording it. And I'm happy to send the link out to everybody tomorrow. And so Dave and I, and Dave's going to give a presentation just on, the work currently going on with National Grid, the plans of the street, timing, and then answer any questions. And Dave has some images and some video also, which you might find helpful just to understand what street reclamation looks like, and what you could expect. And Dave, if you want to take it from there and go through the presentation.
Okay, so thanks a bunch for everyone for joining in. If you can't hear me or can't see me, I'm hoping to share the screen here in a minute. As Megan said, I've got some visuals. Not really a terribly formal presentation, but enough to kind of get the basics of the project. And while it seems like I'm going to Zoom meetings with increasing frequency, this will be a first screen share that I'm doing from my screen. So hopefully it works well. If people have any issues with it, either Megan can help me. It looks like we can raise hands and do other things to let me know. But so I'll kind of start in with this. This is, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, is Granite Street with a little rendering over the top of it, showing what we intend to do. Some of you may have seen this, a similar version of it floated around back when we were going to town meeting, I think originally trying to gear up for it in 2017 and then finally in 2019. And it hasn't changed a lot. There are some finer details in the engineering plans, related to mostly the drainage components and the curbing and the sidewalk and the American Disability Act compliance for all the crosswalks and that business. But before I get too far into those details, I thought I'd just start with a little bit about what we know of budget, and then maybe come back to that, because that's something that is still a bit of a concern for us here down at the DPW. I think we estimated this project to be in the vicinity of about $250,000, or maybe a little less than that back in 2017. We went a little higher when we brought it to town meeting. If my memory is correct, we brought it to the town meeting floor asking for authorization for the town, which is the 75% share of the project, because it's a tier 2 conversion of public to private way, asking for a town commitment of $195,000, which gives us a little over $250,000 in the overall budget for the project. And one of the problems that we've got, both mainly as a result of delays in getting this out to bid, but also in some of the detail as it relates to the drainage work. The project we are currently estimating at about $300,000. And it's always nice to have a little contingency in there to deal with things that you don't anticipate. So the project plans are just going out on the street now, and we'll see. We're being told by some of the early people that are downloading the plan that they're very interested, and we're hoping for a good competitive market. We haven't entirely got that on some of our recent bids, so we'll see. But I just wanted to share that information with you. We'll know a lot more. The bids will be coming in 3 weeks, and we'll know a lot more about where we stand as far as how much money we budgeted and what a contract to do the work will cost.
Dave, we have a question. Hold on 1 minute.
I think, yeah. So how does the budget work if it ends up costing towards the higher end? Like, who pays for it?
So we have a 75-25% split on this. If we had to return to town meeting, it will, I mean, if it was an incremental cost that we think we could either absorb, that's one thing. If it's an additional cost, we may have to go back to the fall town meeting to seek additional funds, and it may impact incrementally the homeowner's payment as well. So we're hopeful that the bid price will come in favorably, but we won't know that for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, what I hope to talk about next was, kind of the primary elements of what we think is the right fit here. So you can see in this graphic, and if anyone wants me to zoom in on any particular part, I'm happy to do that. But in the yellow lines, it gives you an idea of what we think makes sense for drainage. Right now, Granite Street does not have a lot in the way of drainage, and it's 700 feet long, so it should have something. That's a fair amount of runoff, and it's just the history of the street being a private way. So we're proposing some catch basins and drain manholes that start, near Summit. The crown of the road might be up in this vicinity, so it would pick up this runoff. What we ended up with in the final design are catch basins that hopefully collect the water before the intersection. Not a terribly busy intersection, but it's good design to try to collect the water in structures and get it off the road and in pipes prior to the intersection. And then one of the things that we ran into in the final design that is slightly different from some of the early concepts is to avoid the sewer line out here. We ended up adding some drain manholes out in the street. So we end up with 7 structures. Originally, we anticipated a few less. Then there are some rebuilds of catch basins down here. And this all eventually ties into the existing drainage system down at Crown Ridge. Most of you, I think, probably noticed the gas company showed up yesterday. DigSafe was out last week marking up the utilities that exist in the street. And National Grid is, right now pretty active in town. We've been talking to them about this project for the last year, and they made a decision about a month ago to replace the main along Granite Street. So not really a town part of the project. It's National Grid's decision to do it. I think it's a good thing. I think there has been some reports of leaks out there, so you'll get a nice new gas main that's just sort of a benefit of this project going forward. My guess is you'll see National Grid out there for probably the next 2 or so weeks. And they'll put in a new main, and they'll also stub in services out to the houses that are currently on gas. Right now, National Grid, I'll just throw this out there as sort of a public awareness piece. National Grid does not have a plan to reconnect houses. As a company, they have their COVID protocols, and they're not making appointments to go into basements, at least for now. So it might be that the new gas main and the old gas main are going to be in the street underground, and you'll be connected to the old gas main until some point at the future when National Grid figures out how they're going to make arrangements to get into people's houses to switch from from a new gas main to the old gas main. Other components of the project, so it has a 5-foot wide sidewalk, a very important part of kind of the town's complete streets process. And this would allow sidewalk connectivity all the way from Crown Ridge up to Summit. I know Summit doesn't, but, and then over here to Sunset. With that, you'll have concrete ADA ramps in these locations that I'm indicating here, so that visually impaired and wheelchair bound users can safely cross the street. You'll have new high visibility paint markings for the crosswalks to tell people where to cross, and to hopefully get vehicles to behave appropriately when pedestrians are in the sidewalk. The street will have a monolithic berm or a Cape Cod type berm, which is a low profile. It's about 4 inches high, 12 inches wide, and it will be poured as part of the street. So it'll be uniform with the street. And I think it's at least in some of the streets in the neighborhood, affectionately referred to as the Cape Cod berm. You see it all over the Cape. In the end, we ended up just to talk a little bit about street calming traffic. We're hearing that both, I think, from some of the neighbors as we put this plan together, and we're hearing it on the town's traffic committee that maybe not so much now with COVID forces in effect, but there is a bit of a cut-through phenomena. And so we did a few things. We ended up with a 22-foot wide street, which is in our opinion, as narrow as we would want for the volume of traffic that comes through, but pretty narrow. It should be comfortable, plenty comfortable for 2 cars to pass, or for a car to go around a moving truck or a UPS van or any of that stuff. But hopefully the type of width that's appropriate in residential neighborhoods for cars to proceed slowly. In the way of just comparison, I think right now, as you come up Crown Ridge is also about 22 feet wide. If you drive up and down Summit, it's a little narrower and a little variable, but it's probably averages about 20 feet wide. And when you get over here to Sunset, that's closer to 24 feet wide. 24 feet wide is a very common width throughout Wellesley. And what we're finding, with increase of this Waze phenomena, we're looking at a lot of streets and considering narrowing the pavement width a little bit, just to encourage better compliance with speed limits. The other thing that we've done, it might be a little, I'll see if I can pull this over. Down here at the intersection with Crown Ridge, you can see we're changing all these radiuses on both ends of the street to be 30 feet, which will feel narrower and a little tighter, particularly right. This movement from Crown Ridge onto Granite right now is more of a sweeping, probably 50 to 55 foot radius. Again, this is the kind of design we're doing to encourage vehicle users to drive a little more appropriately. You come to the intersection and you're making more of a 90-degree turn with a little narrower radius that should encourage you to be 20 miles an hour or under when you're making this turn. So when we're done, we're going to reclaim, as Megan mentioned. I got a little video, very short, of what a reclaim is like, but it's a machine that would go down the road and take the top 8 inches of the gravel and pulverize it, much like a blender might, and mix it with the asphalt that's out there to create a brand new roadbed. That roadbed will get reshaped so it will have a nice crown in the middle, and the water will shed to both sides. It gets recompacted, and then we'll put 2 new layers of pavement over that. And I've got a little video of that if people want to watch it. So that when you're done, you really have a new roadway kind of from the base up. And if it's all done as it should be done, then it's the kind of road that will give you a service life of 25 plus years. So so maybe I just pause there for a second to see if there's questions. I anticipated going next to what we think the schedule will be, but maybe if people have questions on what the project is, now might be a good time.
I would, before we go to questions, do you want to just touch on the driveways openings?
I do. I was going to save that. I have a few sort of right-away questions, Megan. I might save
Okay.
that at the end, and
Yep.
because some of them might be very specific to people that are here and or not. So
A couple of questions. 8 inches, is that considered the preferred depth to dig down? I know that the report thought that there was a lot of softness under the pavement, and that's why it was cracking. And the other question is, do you know if the gas main connects Crown Ridge to Sunset, or does it end at one or the other ends?
So I can answer the first one. The depth of the reclaim is a result of cores that we did on the road. And it certainly would give enough base to give the structure that you need for vehicles to go over it. What we got out of the cores that we did was that in many areas, the pavement thickness itself is pretty thick. And there are some soft spots underneath, but it was more related to a thin pavement, and then the age of the pavement is kind of what those cores told us. I'm going to punt on the National Grid question. I think we have all your emails, so I can maybe follow up with an answer. I'm under the impression that it is the entire length of Granite, but I need to confirm that, and I don't have a plan in front of me that tells me that.
I have
All
a
right,
question.
from there, I thought go ahead.
I have a question about the width of the street. Are you saying that the final width will be what it is on Crown Ridge?
Yeah, I mean, at least Crown Ridge in the area near Granite, they both measure about 22 feet wide. I know Crown Ridge might have some variability as you go closer to Toad Oak, but
I only bring that up because people go plenty fast on Crown Ridge.
yeah. Road width is an interesting thing. I can tell you, I've been a municipal engineer for, I don't know, 15 or 16 years, and I was a consultant for another 15 or so years. And almost all the roads, at least 90% of the roads that I've built were 24 feet wide, right? This is the very common width for aisles and in shopping malls. This is a very common width for aisles in industrial parks, and is a very common width for streets. And it's really only been the last 5 or 6 years where we're saying, no, you don't really need that much pavement. A car doesn't entirely need 12 feet to drive in. I can tell you, we looked very briefly at something narrow. We would not here in engineering go narrower than a 10-foot lane. So that would be a 20-foot width. And we looked at your vehicle trips on the street, and we would not, Granite would not be a good candidate to go to 20 feet. And I think 22 is a nice, I think you'll find that to be nice, very livable when the deliveries are happening, or the landscape companies are happening, or there's snow and you lose a foot on the side when there's snow. The street is very comfortable to get back and forth on, but yet it won't feel like a boulevard.
What is currently the narrowest point on Granite, just for a reference? Like how many feet is the narrowest?
Why don't I try to put together a little figure and maybe send it around?
Sure.
Other questions? So for there, I thought I'd talk about schedule, and I anticipated doing that kind of in a relative way, because I think when we get the bids in, we'll learn a lot about what the budget is, and that may or may not present some obstacles to us.
Dave,
to find
sorry.
more funding. But But
Can you
in a
hear me?
relative way, I expect the gas company to be out there for the next 2 to 3 weeks, which is good. They will patch the trench. Clearly, the road is not in great condition, and another trench out there is going to, make for not a good surface condition for another 2 or 3 weeks until we get a contractor out there. But it would be our expectation that a contractor would come and they would do the drain work first. So that kind of starts at Summit, goes toward Crown Ridge, and they'd probably be doing that work somewhere between 1 and 2 weeks. It's likely that there'll be road closures or at least detours, 1-lane type detours when they're doing that work. And then after that, we would expect that the contractor would go into prepping for and putting the base down for the new sidewalks and pouring concrete for the new ADA ramps. That also is, about a 2-week window. And then in the end usually in the end is the reclaim, the shaping of the road, and the pavement courses. And that can all happen as quick as a week, but depending on the contractor, there's a good chance they will use a subcontractor for the reclaiming process. And sometimes you lose a few days there. So good to budget another 2 weeks or so. So we anticipate the work going on for about 6 weeks. There will be obviously noise. It will be regular working hours, and there'll be some dust. Dust in the summertime is controlled with some calcium chloride. So it shouldn't be terrible, but it would be more dusty, obviously, than normal conditions, or maybe not given the potholes on Granite. But and then I thought I'd just maybe show really quick these 2 videos. Let's see if I can do this. So this first one, if it works.
I'm not seeing the video. Is anybody else
I
seeing
was
the
gonna say,
video?
I'm not seeing it, Dave. Maybe you're not, are you sharing it?
Is it not working, Megan?
I don't think you shared it, right? I'm not seeing it.
We can hear it.
Let me try again. Where did my screen share go? Huh. How about, is my audio working?
Your audio is working, yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me try one more time. Is that showing? I know it's just the,
Yeah, we see the cone.
all right. Oh. Be patient with me. So I don't know if that worked any better.
You can see it, yep.
Let's see if I can get this back. So what I'm trying to show there is that that's the machine that comes along and in essence by day's end turns your whole street into really a gravel road. They'll put some calcium chloride down to control the dust. The street is usually closed. For a street 700 feet long, it would be done in one day, and your street would be closed. You'd go to work or get up in the morning and it would be a paved street, and by day's end it would be a gravel street. And then within a few days they'd come and repave that. You can see the effort involved, I hope, a little bit in the video. There's the first piece that's grinding up the road, and then there's a pretty significant piece that has to do with shaping the crown of the road and moving any slight undulations in the road so that they're smooth. All right, maybe we go back here. So, and I don't know if there are questions related to that, but I think it at least gives you an idea of kind of what the biggest part of the construction is. I didn't want that. So thoughts on schedule. My anticipation would be that if the bids come in and everything kind of fits from the standpoint of budget dollars, that this work could occur this summer. I do expect some days where the street will be partially closed and some days where there will be a detour around it. When there is a detour, there will always be a police presence and you'll be able to drive up and down the street. Any emergency vehicles will be able to get up and down the street. It's just that the general public won't be allowed to go there. So,
Dave, I have a question from Chad. His microphone's not working. His questions are: originally, some trees and poles were going to be removed. Is that still the case? And two, if the cost is over, are there any parts of the plan that could be adjusted? So if we wanted to value engineer.
So first to trees, kind of one of our biggest problem trees was recently removed, or actually two of our bigger problem trees were removed. And I believe there are two more trees that have to come down for the sidewalk. But otherwise it's not a big tree impact. And then as far as the budget, I'm glad, that's a great question, Chad. There are two things on our list down here at the DPW that we've talked about that could potentially save some money. You might notice in this rendering here, we've got catch basins kind of on all sides of the intersection of Granite and Sunset. And it could be that if we're close in dollars, but we're trying to save some, this catch basin we think is a good safety measure. It's the way the road, in our opinion, should be designed. But you might be able to remove some either a structure or two and some linear feet of drain pipe. And then the other one is we've got a few obstructions in the right of way. Most of them are not terribly big to deal with. They might be some stones and things of that nature, but two of the bigger ones, or one of the bigger ones, is a stone wall that's in this area here that we always envision should be moved out of the right of way. It's the kind of thing that, snow gets pushed up against. It's the kind of thing that potentially a car hits and there's a liability when it becomes a town street. And we were advocating for it to be moved to the limit of the right of way. When the final road curvature was put in here, It's not terribly close, and it might be something that I'll review with the selectmen to see, as well as with the DPW director here, to see if we really want to move that. It's a dry stone wall, as I remember it, and so these days contractors have a tough time finding masons that do that work. It's pretty pricey to do that work because it's a bit time consuming. So it might be something we look at. So a great question, and clearly we'll keep in communication with all the property owners that are affected by those decisions, but not right there yet.
Another question, you're going to be installing catch basins near Summit that will run to Crown Ridge. Does anybody anticipate any problems digging in that area?
So not more than normal. The one of the difficult parts of catch basins these days is they've grown a lot from what they used to be. They now all have 4 feet sumps, so the digging will be deep. We were very fortunate in that when the sewer went in on Granite, the town engineer at that time kept very good records of where he bumped into ledge, and he did bump into some. And we've shown those on the profile, so we've made all the bidders aware of where they are. And there are a few, at least one structure that looks like there'll be some impacts to ledge. Based on the notes we've got, it's nothing that can't be chipped at. It's fractured ledge according to the notes we've got, and it really is not. The work is not very much into the area where ledge was observed in the past. But we've put a ledge item on to the bid form, so we'll have a unit price for the contractor to remove it. And so I guess to answer your question, we expect only minor issues related with it.
Just one question, just to make sure. We're the homeowners with the rock wall. You're saying that I know you're not saying that you're changing the plan at all, but it would be that you might just leave it in place.
It's one of those things that will come to the top of the list if we're trying to do some value engineering. If the budget's close but over,
Got it.
I think it would be one of the first things we'd look at and talk about.
Just wanted to make sure I understood. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
So I was hoping to, I have a bunch of photos and can talk about specific things, but there are a few things that always come up when we do road projects. And we touched on them briefly. Megan touched on them when we talked about driveways. And I touched on them slightly when I talked about things that are in the right of way that don't belong in the right of way. But I guess in broad strokes, we have as a town we have driveway regulations that stipulate how wide a driveway opening can be on the street. And the widest, if you have a double driveway, if you're sort of parking 2 cars, the widest that we allow is a 20-foot apron, say at the gutter line. And then it's supposed to neck down so that it's no more than 20 feet at the right of way or the back of the sidewalk if you've got a sidewalk on your side. So this turns into a problem for a few houses on Granite. There are a few wide driveways. And I don't know in this meeting if we need to kind of dial down to that level, but just from the standpoint of a quick list, we're expecting to narrow things a little bit at, I think, is this number 4? Number 20, is this maybe 20 here? This one, this house is actually, I think 47 Summit, but that's a wide driveway. And then there's also, I think, 3. So what I like to do is mark out on the field what that looks like, and then have, as best as we can, agreement on how we, once you're onto your private property, if you want it to flare back, you've got a basketball, you've got a garage, you got whatever you have, you can do that. It's just that within the right of way, we've got some limits, and since it's becoming a public street and the DPW is building it, we have to meet those requirements. So like I said, I have some pictures. I don't know that we need to go into that level, but you all have my email. You certainly can reach out to me. And like I said, I like to go out and look at them, because often there might be little issues with a wall or a rock or a tree or a shrub. And I want to try to build it in a way that I can give specific direction to my contractor and we get it right the first time. The other one that comes up is very often people have sprinkler systems. You don't always know where your right-of-way property line is when you put your sprinkler system in, and they don't belong in the right-of-way. We very much appreciate the fact that people make the grass beautiful and green, but they really don't belong in the right-of-way. More problematic if you're on the side where the sidewalk is proposed, are more likely to be impacted. On the other side, we wouldn't necessarily go out there and remove the sprinkler systems, but if we're building driveways or building a road and we bump into your sprinkler system, what we typically will do is seize it either by bending it or melting it and twist it up, tie it to a stake, and then you usually have to bring in your irrigation company to reset the head so that it is on private property. We do our very best not to damage anything more than we need to damage. But if you happen to have sprinklers in the right of way right now and you want to meet with me, I'm happy to meet with you out there and figure out the best way to deal with that. The two others that I think are maybe in the category of a special meeting, but happy to listen to questions in or continue this discussion, are this house at 47. It's a beautiful house with a nice railing and a lot of plantings that are very close to the right-of-way, much like the wall that's across the street. What we've put on the plans is to reset the railing at the right-of-way, which we think can be done, but it looks like a pretty custom railing, and I don't know if it's worth meeting with you out there if you're on the line to go over that. We think all of the trees that are here, we're showing them as being protected. The sidewalk will get fairly close, but we think we can protect them from construction. And there are some shrubs kind of near the corner that we don't think we can protect. So might be worth a specific one-off meeting on that property. And then the last one, I don't know if anyone is here from 16, I think is this house. According to our records, that house is still on a septic system. So if there is any interest, which is fine if you have an existing septic system and it's functioning and it's permitted, you can continue to be on it. But if you ever sell the house, you have to pass a Title V inspection. I don't know if you've had a Title V inspection and or if you would want to connect to sewer now before we pave the road. The risk here is that if you don't connect before you pave the road, and this also goes for anyone that might be considering an electrical upgrade. If we pave the road, there's a 5-year moratorium, and you won't be allowed to cut the road for anything that is not an emergency. So a new sewer connection, for convenience, if you will, would not be considered an emergency, and or upgrading your power from 200 amp to 400 amp would not be considered an emergency, and you would have to wait the 5-year moratorium. So if anyone's interested in a sewer connection or electric connection, it would be good to get serious about that in the next month and a half. So I've done a lot of talking. I don't know if there are other questions, or if Megan, you've got other thoughts. I do have pictures, and I've got videos of a regular paver going down the street. Gives you an idea what that's like. Again, the day that the paving will be done in 2 sweeps. One, the binder will go down, and when that goes down, you'll see painted, usually painted orange structures that'll stick up out of the ground about 1.5 inches. That'll be for the sewer manholes and the water gates and the gas gates until they come, usually within a few days, to put the final pavement course on there. And I've got videos of what a paver looks like going down the street, but I think many people have seen that. Not everybody has seen a reclaim. So.
A question
More
about,
questions?
Yeah, a question about what goes between the sidewalk and the pavement, in other words, the tree lawn.
So on this side of the street, there'll be a 2.5-foot wide tree lawn. And we will put in 6 inches of loam and a hydro seed. So grass will grow there. On this side of the street, there is no sidewalk. So the tree lawn ends up being, I think, about 7 or 7.5 feet wide. Again, it will be loomed, freshly loomed and hydro seeded, and grass will grow there. For those that are interested in tree, we tend not to, in Wellesley, we don't plant trees in the tree, in the grass paver strip. Sometimes we plant them when it's wide enough here. What we prefer to do, if there are people interested in trees, is plant them just beyond the right-of-way. This sort of gets them out of the danger of salt influences and car influences and potentially being hit or otherwise damaged. They grow a lot better. They're usually cared for a lot better, watered more frequently in that first year or two when they're coming up to speed. And if anyone is interested in trees, let me know. We would not do that with our contractor. We would do that with our park department. They've got a program for planting trees. And with the NRC, who purchases the trees for us, we plant some, I don't know, 200 or so trees every year. So we love planting them. We just want them to be in a safe, healthy spot.
Can I ask you a quick question? Towards the end near Sunset, there actually is a sidewalk along the 2 houses there. What happens, what's the status of those the sidewalk? It goes right up to, oh God, I don't know the numbers of but past, I don't know if it's number 4, but the 2 houses, the one 31 Sunset and the one right next to it.
Yeah, great question. So in order to get the concrete ADA ramp, this portion, I don't know if you can see my screen, but this portion will get dug up. And then to get a healthy tree lawn in there.
Oh, I apologize. I don't mean the sidewalk. I meant the other side. The other side has a sidewalk. Yes. And so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So the only portion that will stay is enough to create the level landing for the ADA crosswalk. And there is a portion here that gets removed.
So Dave, I'm going to try again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So does the moratorium apply to if we were to redo our personal driveway at some point? Do we have to
So
wait
if yeah, as long as the work can be done outside of the right-of-way, no.
Okay, thank you.
So Chad, just on that, what typically happens is they would then sort of saw cut where on the back edge of where Dave's showing that flare, and you would do your driveway there because the front would be new pavement where the apron is. That's typically how it can be handled.
So, okay, great.
Dave, you had mentioned the chance that 2 other trees are going to come down for the sidewalk. Can you indicate where those trees are?
One more time, Dave, I couldn't hear you.
You mentioned that 2 other trees might be coming down to make way for the sidewalk. Is that right?
Forgive me while I just kind of look at the plans here in a little more detail. I think So we're showing protection of all the trees that are out there with the exception of either a small tree, they have it labeled as a shrub that's kind of right here at the corner of Summit and Granite. There's two right here that we don't think we can save. And I honestly don't know if they're more shrubs or trees. They're labeled on my plans as shrubs. And those are the only two that we don't believe we can save.
Are those, which property are those on? Is that at 47 Summit?
Correct.
Just a random question. Does it ever happen that our driveway is looking a little sad too? Does it ever happen that people who do the work are ever willing to pave driveways too?
Another great question. I will tell you it happens with decreasing frequency. I think there was a time where it was pretty easy for a homeowner to approach the general contractor and say, can I do this separately, come on the weekend or whatever. And I think that happened. What we've found, at least over the last 4 or 5 years, is that the firms that bid on roadway work kind of want to come in, they want to get it done, and they want to get out of there. And there's kind of a different set of contractors that come and do driveways. When we find the contractor and make a contract, I have no problem with you approaching them. It would have nothing to do with the town.
Thanks. No, thanks. Would you know in advance who could you pass along in advance who the contractor is?
Yeah. I don't have a problem. We go through a very public process. We've got to have bids. They got to be opened in public. There will be the low bidder, and then we'll check all their credentials and make sure they meet the specifications. And that's an entirely public process. And I've got no problem sharing their information.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I think the other two trees were ones that I think either were removed by the homeowner or sort of fell in a storm. I think Chad had one of the trees that I think it just came down or had to be removed.
Yeah, nature took down about half that tree. We took down the rest of it.
Yeah, the ones I remember, there was something in this area that came down, and then not too long ago, Highway, I think, removed this one as dangerous or something. I'm not sure, but those were the ones early on we were worried about, if my memory is good.
So Dave and Megan, I do want to say just that I think my favorite part so far tonight was the harder angled turn from Crown Ridge to Granite. I know that was a big concern, so I really appreciate seeing that there, and I think that will help a lot, so thank you.
I'll add, for what it's worth, it was a real challenge for us. I think we're doing this tightening and radiuses in several areas in town. Typically, this scenario where the driveway is so close, we tried a few different layouts of this, and we normally wouldn't do this. A new driveway would have to be 50 feet away from the street. Doesn't work with this house with the way the lot is configured or being able to tie back into the driveway. So it was a bit awkward, but I do think it will help. You'll sort of, have to go straight before you go left. It's not a big sweeping turn anymore, and I think it will help.
Anything else? So just as a reminder, we did record this, so I'll send, as soon as I can figure out how to have our IT person help me upload it tomorrow, I can send you guys the link to the video. So, and we can also send this plan if that's helpful, or the construction plans. We can send those in PDF if you'd like to take a look at those as well.
Definitely, that'd be great.
Very much interested in the construction plan.
Okay.
The construction plans, I certainly can send as an attachment as PDFs. They're not terribly big. But I would also tell you that if you go on the town webpage, bidders are allowed to look at the plans and download the plans there. If you go into the DPW section and look under projects, you'll see Granite Street, and a PDF copy of the plans are there. You're welcome to look there, and or I can email them, whatever's more convenient.
Dave, maybe I'll just send the link. When I send the link to the recording, I can send the link to the bid docs.
That'd be great. The other thing, since it sounds like we're wrapping up a little bit, but you will have my email, I think, as part of this process. Feel free to send me questions. One question that we have often down here at the DPW is for larger projects like Kingsbury, that was what that video was of, and Cliff, we set up like a subscription. You could subscribe to Project News, and it was a good way to deal with schedule changes. Like you're planning on paving and the road's going to be closed Thursday and Friday next week. And then it rains and everyone calls and says, does that mean it's going to be put off till Monday, or are you going to work Saturday, or what are you going to do? And it was a great way to get that kind of very green, very fresh news out. What we found, like say with Cliff Road, there were, I don't know, 100 and something houses, and very few people participated. and for Granite, my opinion is that ultimately my clerk will end up having probably everyone's email address, and we can just do an email blast. But if people have thoughts on the best way to share information and how much information you want to have shared, most people want to know the basics of schedule, but other people want to know more details. So if you've got thoughts on that, send it to me, and as we get the project rolling, it's always best if we can find a way to communicate openly.
Any other last minute questions or concerns?
Thank you. That was incredibly helpful.
Yes, thank you. My kids love this whole project, so.
I wish the big trucks are out.
Exactly.
Thank you again.
So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. It was a great presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Looking forward to getting it done.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll send out the recording, and because I know there was a couple neighbors that couldn't make it. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's thoughts.